Welcome back to the Legal Smith Unleashed. I'm attorney Kurt Smith, here today with paralegal extraordinaire Dylan Smith.
How's it going?
It's going well. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep. So, look, what do you do when you're going to trial and things just don't quite go the way that you're expecting? That's the focus of today's Legal Smith Unleashed. We've had a couple of trials lately where, for whatever reason, comedy of errors or lucky stars aligning or a glitch in the matrix, whatever the case may be, you get let's start there. You get a trial, right?
Right.
And let's start even before. You file a case, right? And you go through some initial proceedings, and eventually the court says, you know what? We need a trial. Mm-hmm. And so the court sets trial. And is trial set right away?
Sometimes.
Very rarely. Usually it's months and months and months away.
Well, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes the trial gets set and there hasn't even been a motion filed.
Few and far between. Well, sometimes we pick up trials where there hasn't been a motion.
Sure. Not cases we've taken from start to finish.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, what happens when you go, and so you've got this trial set, and you've got to go through discovery. You've got to go submit your request for production. You've got to submit your interrogatories, and you've got to submit your what am I forgetting there?
Production, interrogatories, and admissions.
All three of those, and then they submit theirs, and we exchange documents, and we go through all the process, and you figure out who your judge is, and you get all the way up to the date of trial. And we've talked about this before on the show. It's very important to know who your judge is, right? Because your judge is the one that's making the decisions. And so, knowing who the judge is and how they're likely to rule is a big part of the case.
Totally.
So,
gotta play the audience.
You gotta play the room, right? And so, we had a case recently where we went through that entire process. And this is a case where Mom and Dad, they were just fantastically brilliant people, and they decided to split their kids up and raise one of them in one state and one of them in another state. And eventually they both decided almost simultaneously that wasn't a good idea, and so they decided to put the kids, both requested primary custody of both kids in one state. And the question is it going to be Dad that gets both kids or Mom that gets both kids? And it's a fascinatingly interesting question, because realistically, it's generally considered not to be a good idea to split the kids up.
Totally, yeah. Raise them together, keep the family, at least the kids together.
Right. So you've got the parental bond, right? Child's relationship with the father, child's relationship with the mother. And already, because this is a divorce situation, or parents are no longer together, at least, whether they are married or not, but let's call it a divorce situation. The parents have blown it in some way, right? Whether somebody cheated on somebody, whether somebody was abusive, whether somebody got into drugs or alcohol or hookers and blow, right? Who knows, right? And so
infinite possibilities on why two people split up.
Right. And so these two people have split up, and so we've severed the parental bond, right? And we have, at least in some way, most likely, I've never seen it go the other way, but maybe this happens where there's absolutely no impact on the parent-child relationship. You don't see that. There's going to be some impact, however small or however large, on the parent-child relationship. So that sibling relationship is generally considered to be something we really want to keep, right?
Right, yeah.
You've got siblings, right?
I do.
Any that you like?
Not really, but no, I have 2 sisters and I love them very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, no matter what happens with the mom and the dad, you want to make sure that the siblings at least can stay together and keep that sibling bond. And so when mom and dad get together and go, hey, you know what? We were together because we thought you were the one, and it turns out you were not the one. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and not only am I going to ruin our relationship, why don't we do our best to ruin the children's relationship as well?
Yeah, it's terrible.
It is terrible. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go, but that's where we were here. But we end up with a situation where now the parents have realized, we're going to correct that issue. And so in our situation, we've got a pretty good case going on. Now, we've got dad, okay? And a lot of people come and they say, well, Nevada is a mom state, so dad can't win, right?
Sometimes people believe that, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of people on the other side, oh, this is a total dad state. Dads get all the breaks, right?
Well, where are the dad states?
So we're in this situation, and we've got dad, and so if we're going to win, we've really got to, we got to convince the judge to strip the kids from mom and give the kids to dad. And we had a pretty good case going.
We did.
All the stars were aligning. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we prepped it all out. We were walking in that day confident because mom was kind of dropping the ball, so we had some, good things going for dad.
Yeah, she dropped the ball quite a bit. In fact, she moved inappropriately. She basically violated Nevada law in how she moved out of state and then moved to another state without telling anybody. That's essentially a parental abduction, right? And so we've got a pretty good line on dad's going to be able to get both kids. And we walk in the door ready for our trial, and who's there to greet us? A different judge, okay? Yeah. Not the judge we're looking for.
Our judge was on vacation in
she couldn't be bothered to be there that day. So she sent in a senior judge, and not that senior judges are bad, not that they are forgetful or have some kind of old age issue that would prevent them from ruling in a good way. It's just a different judge. Now, the bad news in those situations is when you walk in, as I've done from time to time, you walk in and not only do you have a senior judge, it's a senior judge you've never met before, right? Oh, great. What is this person all about, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, in our particular case, we walk in and it's a senior judge, but it's a senior judge we know. And I'm still fairly confident because it's a senior judge I know. It's somebody I've worked with quite a bit in the past. I've got we've had private mediations with this judge in the past. And so I'm feeling fairly confident, but still, it's not quite the person that I expected to be there.
Yeah, she's just not familiar with, she hasn't been start to finish in the case like our normal judge had been.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we get in there, we go to do introductions, and before we can even do introductions, the judge says, yeah, we'd like to see counsel in the back. Oh, now if you've ever seen Law and Order, right? And they go, you'll see that from time to time. One party will make a good argument, and then the other party makes a good argument, and the judge will be like, I'll see you in chambers, right? And so we don't get chambers a lot, at least in the courtroom that I'm in. I don't know that you know this, but because you kind of stay in the courtroom a lot.
Yeah,
but,
I don't get to go back to chambers.
Chambers in our courtroom is out the door, up the stairs, and then you've got to navigate the cube farm that's up there. And finally you get to the judge's chambers, right? Gotcha. And they're very nondescript. They're not like the chambers that you see on Law and Order. They're very governmental office type looking rooms. But the senior judge doesn't even have a chambers. So we get to do kind of like a sidebar in the back hall, right?
Okay.
And so we go in the back, and judge is like, well, why don't we come down? So we go down the hall, and it's kind of a back hall that separates the two corridors of courtrooms on either side. It's kind of a central hall. And we go in the back, and she's like, pull up a chair. And so we pull up a chair, and the judge is like, how do we settle this case? And I'm like, settle the case? Judge, I don't know. I don't know how to settle this case. I've got one child in state one. I've got one child here, and we want to have both children together. Both parties want the same thing. How do we settle the case? We don't.
Right.
Or I've got a good way to settle the case. How about this? Mom, you give up, and we win. That would be a great way to settle the case. And the judge says, no, that's not what I had in mind. I'm like, well, what do you have in mind, Judge? And the judge says, why don't we have Mom have one kid and Dad have the other?
Exactly what they already had.
Exactly what they already have. Now, it's not that that
geez.
would be the worst thing in the world. In normal situations, I would say it's the worst thing in the world because I don't want to separate the kids.
Yeah.
But Bonehead Parent 1 and Bonehead Parent 2 have already done that for us, right? They've already detrimentally affected these kids. And so now the judge is suggesting, well, why don't we just do this? And so now is the time where we get to give our best arguments, right? We get to go, Judge, here's why you shouldn't do that, right? But it's not good for the kids. This is where we are. And the judge is like, well, siblings don't always need to be together, do they?
Yes.
Yes, yes, they do. They have to. Well, they don't have to, but they should be, don't you think? Sometimes kids don't get along. Like, whose side are you on? You're obviously not on my side, and you're obviously not on their side. You're on your own side. And you start getting the feeling you just don't want to have a trial.
Yeah.
You want to get this over with as quickly as possible. Because we're scheduled for the entire afternoon.
Yeah.
If we would settle the way that you would like, we'll be out of here in about 10 more minutes, which would be perfect for you because you get paid for the rest of the day. So what do you do?
Well, you tell the judge no. Do you work it out? What do you do?
So the bonehead move is to tell the judge, that's an interesting idea, Judge, but let me tell you why you're wrong and you're stupid, and we're going to do this my way, and there will be no settlement. Now, I've been doing the things about 20 years, right? It's this old hat for me, but I happen to have had lots of trials with this judge in the past. I happen to have been in lots of these situations where the judge pulls us in the back, this particular judge, and says, here's what I think based on what I've read. And they want you to go a certain way, and you say, yeah, Judge, sorry, we're not going to do it. And the judge says, well, that's interesting because to me, this is a very, very close case. And, you're not even willing to try. I think I smell things moving in the other direction.
Really?
Yes. And you're like, well, wait a minute. No, I didn't mean I couldn't do it, Judge. Let me maybe go out and talk to the client. And I've had cases where we told the judge no, and the judge, where there was a close call, the judge made sure to go the other way, right?
Wow.
I've seen cases where the other side did that, and, to my benefit, where there was a close call, the judge is like, oh, yeah, that's Mr. Smith's win on that one. And so I happen to know this entire case, it leans on one decision, right? And it's a very close call. And so who's going to be the guy that says no? It's not going to be me, right? If anybody's going to say no, it's going to be the other side. And so now, again, we're in the back. You guys are in the front with the clients and the marshal but we're in the back.
Yeah.
And, for any of you Hamilton fans out there, I was in the room where it happened. Thank you. So
That's a good one.
So I'm in the back, and we're making, and this is the backroom deal. This is the cigars going, and we're sitting there. Yeah, and it's kind of a horrible situation to be in because I don't think it's right. But I know this judge. I know what might happen.
Yeah.
I know, even though the law says we win, and I've explained to the judge, this is what we need to do. The judge is saying, well, that's an interesting perspective. That's the only perspective. Well, yes, but you can get around it by X, Y, and Z. And I say, no, you can't. Well, let's see what happens if we go to trial.
So, I mean, what do you do, right? So obviously you have the responsibility. You got to go outside, talk to the client, present it to them, see what they say. But if your client ultimately says, no, I don't want to do that, and I'm willing to go to trial, is there any recourse? Like, do you ever just defy the judge in that moment just because, that's what the client wants and that's what the law says?
Yes, you can do that. But there's a concept that we need to talk about, which is called client control, okay? And the judge will always ask, how much client control do you have? Now, for those of you listening at home, client control is not some kind of a mental mind game that we play with our clients. It's not hypnosis. It's really saying, how much does your client trust you, and can you get them to do what might be in their best interests in this particular situation? Now, sometimes we have lots of client control.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have no client control, right? And so in this particular situation, I say, look, judge, I don't like it. I don't think my client likes it. But I think I have some client control. Let me go out and see, and maybe he can go out and see, and we'll go out, and the other opposing counsel go out, and we'll talk to our clients. We'll see if we can make it happen. And if it's possible, judge, I will try. I will try to do as you suggest. Although my clients, I know my client's not for it.
Yeah.
The judge is like, well, see if you can make them for it, right? And so now, again, if you're not familiar with the process, I need to get it so that the other guy is the guy that says, no, we're not going to do it, right?
Right.
So how do I go out, talk to my client, then go talk to the opposing counsel and perhaps goad them into saying no? And so that's basically what we did. We go out, I talk to the client, and I go, look, this is where the judge sees it. And the client's like, well, what do you think? And I said, well, you're either going to take the judge's suggestion, or you're going to have to go on the stand and tell all about why this shouldn't be the case. And the client's like, well, I don't want to go on the stand. I'm like, well, if you don't want to go on the stand, maybe this is the way to go. But, I'll try to get it the other way. So I go out, I talk to opposing counsel, and opposing counsel's like, well, that was the interesting part of this case, is that, the deal was that dad was okay separating the kids if mom would pay all of the transportation costs. And so opposing counsel comes in and goes, you know what, I think we can get that deal done, except dad's going to have to pay half of the transportation costs. And I'm like, absolutely not. No way, Jose, that's not going to happen. This was the deal. They're going to either stick to the deal or we're going to trial.
Yeah.
And so opposing counsel's like, well, okay, then we'll see. And so we go back in, we talk to the judge, and the judge is like, all right, so how'd you do? And I said, well, we've got a little hiccup because I've got an order, and, we're either going to stick with the order that we have or we have to go to trial. But bonehead opposing counsel here, he wants to change the order. That's just not going to happen. If we're going to do it your way, judge, it's got to be this.
Yes.
Now, in the meantime, my client also is telling me, I'd like to make a couple changes. And I say, well, you're going to ruin the argument, right?
Right.
If we're going to change one thing, then we can change everything. Here, we have to change nothing, right? And so...
Client control.
Client control. How much do they trust you? And the client's like, you know what, I trust you, so go ahead. So the judge is like, well, Mr. Smith, you make a fair point. If we're not going to change anything, then mom's got to pay for 100% of the transportation. And I've told the client in the meantime, look, and if she blows it, we'll come back and we'll get custody of both kids.
Yeah.
So the client's like, oh, okay, that sounds great. So that's what we end up doing, and we end up settling on a case that we really should have won, but probably wouldn't have won because of the judge.
We really did have kind of an unwinnable situation. I mean, we can win it for the client, make the client happy, but in the back of our mind, we have those kids. We're kind of just hoping that mom messes up and we can come back and hopefully get them back together. But, you know, I can see it from the judge's perspective. You take one kid away from the parent that they've been with, and you know, that's traumatic too.
Sure.
And is it worth getting the kids together? Is it worth paying the price of separating them from the parent that they're more comfortable with? Right. But yeah, it's tough.
So that's trial number one. Now, trial number two, let's flip the script, right? On that one, we had a fantastic case. We should have won that case, but for the judge saying, I'm not going to let you even try, right?
Right.
Case number two, we've got an unwinnable case. Oh, my goodness. Now, the good news is these parties have joint legal, joint physical custody. And Dad's kind of messed things up a little bit. We've got the mom in this case. Dad's kind of messed things up a little bit. And he's what Dad essentially did was they got joint custody, and then Dad moved. Dad moved to another state and left the kid with Mom. Mom decides she's had enough of that, and she files for primary custody. And we end up going to trial on the issue. And in the meantime, Dad moves back, and now we're sharing joint custody again. And Mom wants to get the judge to rip the joint custody away and give her primary custody. And there's a number of factors that we've got to look at, best interest factors, to see what's going to happen. But the problem is we've got a very young child, so the child doesn't really get a say-so in this. Nobody's, had a guardianship nominated. CPS was never called out. The kid was never stripped away from either parent. There's been no parental abduction. So we really get down to some of the issues that we're looking at is who's got the better relationship with the kid?
Yeah.
And in this case, they've got an equal relationship with the kids. And, so do we have enough as far as like cooperation and the ability to communicate and cooperate and the level of conflict between the parties? And so we're trying to develop this story that says Dad is such a horrible parent, you must strip away his joint custody and give primary custody to Mom. And as we're going through the evidence, what did the evidence look like?
Well, look, I mean, Mom and Dad have been going to court for years.
Right.
And, they've been separated for years. They've been doing their own thing, but they just can't get along. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that they still have, the one over the other, is control and forcing you back to court.
Right.
So they just love doing that. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is we've had this case for a while, mm-hmm. so we've got the opportunity to do all the discovery mm-hmm. processes, unlike our first trial. And so as we're putting everything together and we're building our story and we're trying to back it up with real evidence that supports our story, every single time Dad does something bad, Mom's done the exact same thing.
It's a tit for tat, right?
And so there's nothing we can use against him because you read one message down and there's their evidence against us.
Right. So she'd send us a text message and be like, look what he says. Mom, you're a prostitute at night after your main job. And she'll turn around and go, oh yeah, well, you're a male escort. And then we're like, oh, well, okay, well, where's the, how is it that you're the good guy here?
Right.
And we keep trying to tell her, look, when you do get these messages, you want to be the good guy, right? So when he reaches out and calls you the worst mom in the world and tells you where to go and how to get there and what to do once you get there, you don't turn around and tell him, oh, yeah, let me one-up you. And that's what she kept doing.
Yeah.
And so all of our evidence is this tit for tat back and forth. And as we're closing in on trial and getting all this evidence together and looking at it, we start realizing we don't have a case. Like, Dad's moved back to town. That was the best part of his case, right?
Right.
But he's back, and we've got kind of these two childish parents that are going back and forth at each other, and neither one looks any better or worse than the other.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Honestly, you try to get client control and tell them to settle.
Right. So it gets back to the issue of client control. And in this particular
This one we
situation,
actually should have settled.
we should have settled this one, but for client control purposes, we had zero. Right.
And look, even you as the best attorney in town, some clients are just clients are just the worst clients in town, and
Sure.
there's nothing you can do.
And so, we must have pulled this girl in 4 or 5 times, and like, hey, as we're looking at this case, you don't have one. Probably we should settle this case. No, I don't want to. All right, what happens if you lose? Well, I don't know. What happens if I lose? Well, you may get sanctions against you, and you may end up paying Dad's attorney fees.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. It's the principle. It's the principle.
It's all about the
thing.
principle.
Oh my goodness! A very wise man once told me, my mentor in the law, principles are extremely expensive, and what he meant by that is this. Because I've been doing this about 20 years. He was doing it about 30 years by the time I met this guy. And he says, look, I've had client after client after client, and they come in and they say, here's what I want to do. And I say, well, that's going to be expensive. And they say, I don't care. It's the principle of the thing, right? I don't care if I win or lose. I don't care about the money. It's the principle. And so I say, okay, and I take the case and I take them all the way to trial, and they lose. And then the judge says, you know what? You made this guy spend $50,000 in attorney fees. I'm going to make you reimburse him every single penny.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And the very next day, he would get a call from the client going, you're a real jerk. You really blew the case for me. You lost the case, and now I got to pay this guy $50,000, the guy that I was going after for $50,000. Now I got to pay him $50,000. Thanks a lot. And I said, well, wait a minute. You told me it wasn't about the outcome. It was only about the principle. And they said, well, hell with the principle. I want to pay him $50,000, right? And it's never, that's the moral of the story, is it's never about the principle. It's always about the money at the end of the day. Totally. And so you've got to be able to convince these people that you may think that this is a moral high ground that you have. But if your attorney, who you're paying thousands of dollars to, tells you you don't have a case, it's probably a good idea to listen. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to pay $50,000 to the other side for their attorney fees. You are, right?
Totally.
It's not. This isn't my case. I'm the one prosecuting the case. But as I'm asking you for the evidence, and the evidence that you give me is evidence that you're at fault, or that you're a horrible person, or that you like to yell and scream at the other side. Wow, right? I mean, that's not good evidence for you. And you might want to get out of this case while you can, because it's always, the problem with trial is nobody knows what's going to happen, right? So the judge might glom onto one aspect of the case and say, this is the worst thing in the world. Well, we never know what that one issue is.
No, you don't.
It's the judge that decides what the one issue is. And so, in these cases, as I'm looking at it, and I know who the judge is that we've got, and I'm saying, look, I know your judge, and your judge is going to say you're both equally horrible people, but you're the one that pushed this to trial. You're the one that forced the issue, and because of that, I'm making you pay the other side's attorney fees. Nobody wants to hear those words, least of all your humble attorney here, who is only trying to help the citizenry of Las Vegas, right? You don't want to hear those words, because then we come out with, the nasty phone calls, and then we get little letters written, and, nasty comments online, and, in worst case scenarios, complaints to the state bar, right? This guy didn't do his job. I wanted $100,000 and now I got to pay 50 grand to the other side. Yeah, but I told you, I warned you, right? And so we get in this situation and we've got to go to trial. And even before trial, we have our typical pretrial meeting with the client, and I'm telling the client, you don't have a case.
Last chance saloon.
Last chance saloon, as they say on Bugs Bunny, right? So and the client's like, I don't care, I'm going to trial. And I said, look, you don't have a case. But if you do have a case, here's what you got to do, okay? You've got to have your Martin Luther King moment, right? You've got to get up on the stand, and as you're being asked these questions, and the right question's going to come up, and you'll know when it happens, and you'll say, Your Honor, here's the problem. I have a dream! And in that dream, I get primary custody of the kids, right? And you're going to explain in a passionate way why this is the way to go. And guess what the judge is going to say? Oh, I was so moved by your soliloquy that yes, I must give you primary custody of the kids, even though the evidence doesn't really show it. Your impassioned speech. Think Miracle on Ice, right? Kurt Russell giving that speech, and he's saying, "Look, on any other day, we would lose this game, but not this day. Not today. We're going to win." It inspires the team to go out and win the game, right?
Totally.
That's what we're looking for. And I say, listen, Mom, you've got to do this. You've got to have that moment. So I'm gonna tee it up for you. I'm gonna give you the alley-oop, and you're gonna jump up and you're gonna slam it home. And so we get Mom on the stand, and I say, Mom, tell me about this. Yes. Tell me about this. Isn't this true? Yes. Isn't this true? Yes. Now tell me about this. And I tee it up for Mom, and I say, tell me about how Dad, mistreated you and made you feel like crap. Isn't that true? Not really. No, I was okay. I was okay when that happened. Yeah, but didn't it cause a emotion in you that made you, belittled you to such an effect that we've got to change custody? No, I don't think so. Nope. And we've got this all of a sudden, this horrible witness on the stand, the horror going through your mind saying, well, this is it. This is the one.
You are missing your chance. The boat is sailing away, and you are still on shore.
You hear the Doppler effect going as the car goes by.
Yeah.
And
there goes your primary custody.
There goes your entire case. And now you're sitting here trying to go, well, how do I fix this, right? And this was another case. I didn't expect it because this judge doesn't do it a lot. But we got we rested our case with our client going, how'd I do? And they go, you did really, really great. I mean, not that great, but okay, you didn't do very well. So, but let me go talk to the judge. We get back in the back, and the judge is like, I don't think Mom proved her case. I think we're going to rule in Dad's favor. I said, yeah, but Judge, she did make some good points with this and this and this. Yeah, she did, but it's not enough to change custody. Okay, but you gotta admit Dad was a real heel, doing this and that. Oh, he was. I think you ought to do, Judge. I mean, you're gonna do what you're gonna do. I'm not the boss here, right? You are, and I bow in respect at your ultimate wisdom in this circumstance. But maybe what you ought to do is go out and before you rule against Mom, tell Dad all the horrible things he did so that he knows for next time that he can't do these things, and maybe we won't have to come to court again. If you'll do that, Judge, I think that'll satisfy Mom. And the judge goes, you're right. You're right. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to rule against him, but I will tell him what a horrible person he was. And I said, that's a great idea, Judge. So we go out, and the judge gets on the bench, and she goes, I'm going to rule in Dad's favor. But before I do, sir, you've been a horrible person in this way, and you've been a horrible person in this way, and you've been a horrible person in this way, and I don't want to see that ever again. And Mom, you weren't all that great either, but Dad, you were really horrible. Okay, case dismissed. Dad, you win. Anything else, guys? And opposing counsel, of course, right, gets a, oh, Your Honor, since we won, shouldn't we get our attorney fees? Mr. Smith, what are your thoughts? Well, Your Honor, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, they won because we didn't have enough to change custody. But remember all those horrible things Dad did that you just told him he shouldn't do? We can't reward him for that, right? No attorney. The judge is like, huh, yeah, you're right. I did admonish Dad the most here. Yeah, no attorney fees for anybody. Everybody go home. And so that's what we end up doing, right? I mean, look, couple rules here. It's very difficult. Number one, client control, right? It's great when we have client control because the clients will trust us and they'll we can guide them towards the right thing. But number two, you've got to listen to your attorney, right?
You do.
If you don't listen to what the guy who gets to go in the back room with the decision maker and come back and go, they're really not liking your case, you might want to listen, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, bad things can happen. They didn't happen this time, of course, but they could have happened. And had they happened, we would have gotten nasty grams. But as it stands, I think everything turned out okay.
Another stellar victory.
Yet another stellar victory, right? So there we go. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Legal Smith Unleashed. We will see you next time.
See you next time.